The other week, I was reading about the miracle where Jesus fed the crowd of people with 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish, and I had to sit with this because I'm analytical. And when you first read this, you kind of think, "Oh, this is a decent miracle." But the more that you actually break it down from an analytical standpoint, you realize that there's something much more deeper happening underneath the surface of this particular text. And so, what I began to realize changed everything for me on how I look at this particular story. See, the issue here was never about the size of the need, it was never about the hunger of the crowd, it wasn't even about the amount that was actually available. See, the real tension in this story is really about what happens when human limitations meet divine multiplication. See, we have a situation here where you have a crowd of people gathered, and there's an overwhelming need. The disciples, well, they're stressed and they're calculating the scarcity, right? And in the middle of it all, Jesus takes what doesn't look like enough for a few people and he gives thanks for it. And then he begins to break it. And then once he breaks it, he begins to distribute it. And see, that's where this story shifts from being about food to actually being about faith. Because you see, in this story, everybody eats. And it's a story that doesn't start with abundance that's already in the room. It's a story that starts with surrender in the hands of Jesus. Welcome back to Faith and Focus. Here's a biblical story where everybody eats, but not everybody brings a lunch. See, the story takes place in Matthew 14, verses 13 through 21. So I want you to go back. I want you to read it. I want you to check it out for yourself. But here's my take, all right? So there's a crowd of over 5,000 men, not counting the women and the children. So actually, the crowd size could have been anywhere between 10 to 20,000 people, right? So when you look at a crowd that size and you think about what was actually done, it's quite amazing, right? It's quite amazing. But see, here's the thing. According to John 6 and 9, it tells us that it was a boy that brought the 5 loaves and the 2 fish. Think about that. Thousands of people came to receive, but only one person, a boy, came prepared. Thousands of people were there that had a need, but only one person had provision. Everybody was hungry, but only the boy had something in his hands. And yet Jesus used the one, the boy, who was prepared to feed everybody. Preparation, that's a whole nother message for another day. So we're going to definitely circle back around to that one. But see, if you think about this particular story, it shows us that God doesn't start with what everybody needs. He starts with what we're willing to surrender. So let's keep leaning in. See, I want to focus on 5 things from this particular passage, right? So the first thing is that God solves community problems through individual obedience. See, the miracle that happened, it wasn't hiding in heaven. It was sitting in a little boy's lunch basket. So imagine if this little boy had held on to it, thinking or saying, this isn't a lot. It's not going to feed anybody. It's not going to make a difference. I bought this for me. Then the crowd would have stayed hungry and the miracle would have never happened. So just think, how many blessings are waiting on our willingness to release what we have? See, your gift, my gift, it may look insignificant to us. Our testimony, sometimes it seems small to us. Even our resources may feel limited to us. But you see, in God's hands, our little becomes much. See, the miracle was never in the amount. The miracle was in the surrender. So the second point here is that Jesus made them sit before he fed them. See, this is one of the most overlooked parts of this particular story. You see, before multiplication came, Jesus organized the crowd. He instructed everybody. He said, sit down here on the grass. Why? Why did he make them sit on the grass? Because see, God is not the author of chaos or confusion. There's an order to everything. See, many of us, we want provision while remaining spiritually scattered. We want to be blessed without discipline. We want God to increase what we have without having order. We want the harvest without the structure. And Jesus in this moment teaches us that stewardship often comes before abundance. And sometimes the reason that we're not seeing multiplication isn't because God lacks the resources. It's actually because we lack the readiness. So the third point here, and I might say that this is probably my favorite one, but honestly, all three of them are tough. So here's number three. Number three is that everybody ate the same bread. It was no VIP section. It was no preferred seating. There was no rich line or poor line. There was no disciples only meal, nothing special that they got. Everybody ate from the same from the same source. And see, this is a picture of grace, diversity, equity, and inclusion all rolled up into one. Because see, at the foot of the cross, titles, statuses, income, and class, all of that disappears. Race disappears. Our educational levels and our status disappear. And our need becomes the great equalizer. See, in today's world, the CEO and the janitor both need Jesus. The pastor and the addict both need Jesus. Successful or struggling, same Jesus, same name, same Jesus. And see, so in this situation, everybody eats. And the fourth lesson is that Jesus doesn't need much to meet our needs, but he does remove our limited thinking. See, Jesus provided a mindset shift. See, the disciples, the only thing that they saw was lack. They saw 5 loaves and 2 fish, and they said, this ain't enough. But Jesus, he saw abundance hidden inside limitation. The disciples, they counted what they had. But Jesus, on the other hand, he blessed what they had. And see, many of us, we're praying for more while God is telling us to stop regarding what we already have. See, the disciples, they looked at insufficiency. But Jesus, he took it and he looked at it as possibility. And then the last one, leftovers matters. And see, this may be the most overlooked lesson of it all. See, after everyone ate until they were full, then Jesus told them disciples to go gather the fragments, go gather the leftovers. And when they gathered everything, there was 12 baskets left. But why? Because God wastes nothing. Not opportunities, not pain, not failure, not seasons, not resources. He doesn't even waste our experiences. See, the God who multiplies also preserves. So the leftovers, they were evidence that God had done more than enough. Let that sink in. See, what began as scarcity ended as surplus. What began as lack ended as abundance. What began in one boy's hands ended in 12 baskets. See, here's a deeper question I had to ask myself. I said, why 12 baskets? Here's the answer. Because there were 12 disciples. See, the same disciples who doubted that there would be enough left were each left carrying a basket of evidence. See, the miracle, it wasn't just for the crowd. It was also for the disciples, for the followers of Jesus. See, Jesus fed the people, but he also educated his followers. The baskets, see, they became a testimony that the disciples could carry, that the disciples could touch, that the disciples could hold. See, every disciple walked away holding proof that God can do more than what makes sense. See, sometimes God leaves evidence behind because, well, he knows that we're going to need a reminder in our next season of doubt. That's why it's not for him, it's for us. See, here's the main takeaway. In a situation where everybody eats here, but the real miracle wasn't just about the bread. The real miracle was that God took one surrendered lunch. He blessed it, he broke it, he distributed it, and then he used it to feed an entire community. And that's how God still works today. He still takes ordinary people like me and you, like us, and he blesses us. He also breaks us, and then he distributes us. And it's through our lives that he feeds others. So the question here isn't whether God has enough. The question is this. The question is, what are you holding that God wants you to place in his hands? Because just like the boy, when it's surrendered to him, everybody eats. So thanks for tuning in. If this blessed you, more importantly, if you know if it'll bless somebody else and there's somebody that can benefit from this lesson, then I want you to share it. And then I want you to join us next week. But most importantly, I want you to keep your faith and focused. I want you to be blessed. And I want you to remember that what we put in the hands of Jesus has no limitations.